Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Butler. I'm the director of the Riley County Police Department in Riley County, Kansas. I'd like to begin by expressing my sincerest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Mr. Jared Kemp. As you heard earlier, he was an active duty soldier stationed at Fort Riley. The loss of human life under any circumstances is a tragedy, and members of the RCPD tried to avoid outcomes like this whenever possible. Mr. Kemp appeared to be experiencing a mental health crisis, and his death is a tragedy that we were unable to get him the help that he so sorely needed. When responding to a high-risk incident involving the potential use of lethal force, officers and supervisors always prioritize the safety of persons at or near the scene when making tactical decisions. Sometimes that means backing off. The officers did this by having traffic blocked and safeguarding several people at different stages of this incident who were attempting to help Mr. Kemp, and Mr. Wilkerson did a very good job of explaining those attempts. I'm going to briefly describe certain aspects of Riley County Police Department training, resources, and policy that guide our officers in situations like this one. I'd like to emphasize that a comprehensive description of what I'm going to briefly summarize is found on our website. What I will talk about is on our website, and there's a lot more detail on our website about these things. So instead of me reading all of that to you, I'll reference it and encourage you to go to our website to find out more. One of the things that I want to emphasize is the comprehensive nature of the mental health training that our officers undergo. Police interaction with people within our community suffering from a mental health crisis is a daily occurrence, like it is in most communities. We offer several tiers of training to our officers when they are first hired. They receive mental health first aid training. It's a one-day course, but what that does is it helps them recognize the signs of mental illness. They don't diagnose it, but it gives them some indication that the person they're dealing with is in crisis. And then they know, I have other resources that I can access to try to help me in these situations. We also have about 30% of our officers trained in something called crisis intervention. It's a 40-hour class. What crisis intervention is designed to do is also emphasize recognizing signs of mental health crisis, but also it's almost entirely devoted to de-escalation tactics and techniques. How to avoid escalating a situation where force is more likely to have to be used or someone can get hurt. This training is comprehensive in nature. It involves role-playing. It involves mental health professionals as part of the instruction staff and other folks who are experienced in crisis intervention training. We also, when we train our officers in basic training after graduation from the academy, de-escalation and problem solving is a major component of that training. Training that also requires practical exercises that are evaluated by other staff members before they can move on to the next phase of training. These trainings are given because this is how we expect our officers to perform all the time. These tactics, these de-escalation techniques are used in other situations where mental health crisis is not a factor. People who are upset or angry or irrational. And these same tactics work very well in those situations as well. Mr. Wilkerson referenced our crisis co-responder. We actually have two of them. They sometimes will go out on calls for service depending on the nature of the circumstances. Sometimes they follow up based on referrals officers make when the co-responders are not working, so they can follow up with someone who we believe through our training is in mental health crisis. And it could be somebody who's already a client of Pawnee Mental Health or somewhere else. And we find that those referrals and sometimes on-scene assistance is very, very helpful. As part of our role in the community in law enforcement, we also participate actively in the Pawnee Mental Health Task Force. Since I have been appointed director, we have created a crisis intervention team that is a subset of the the Pawnee Mental Health Task Force. Earlier this year, we had planned for the very first time to hold our own local 40-hour crisis intervention training class for our officers so we could train more, and also other first responders, EMS, and law enforcement from neighboring jurisdictions. Unfortunately, the pandemic caused that class initially to be delayed again, and delayed again. I'm not suggesting that having that class would have prevented what happened on October 2nd. What I'm suggesting is how seriously we take this issue and how we want to get as many personnel as possible trained in crisis intervention. We also have specific policies on responding to mental health situations that guide our officers. Some of these things I just mentioned are part of that. We offer a robust employee assistance program for our officers when they deal with stressful situations to help them recognize the stress that they're experiencing from their daily duties and give them the help that they need so they can come to work in a healthy state of mind and make sound decisions in stressful situations like this. We also have several policies on use of force. I'll just refer to it overall as a use of force model. And this model helps guide officers when deciding what level of force is reasonable in response to a person's resistance and perceived threat level. Some of these things are policy issues, but they are similar to what Mr. Wilkerson described is in statute. This I will read specifically, and this is on our website, what I'm about to read to you. So the force model is simple and it's easy to apply and remember, and comports in principle to constitutional law. The principles are: A, when an officer reasonably believes that a subject presents no threat to himself or others, the officer will respond with force likely to cause no injury. When an officer reasonably believes that a subject presents a threat to himself or others likely to cause minor physical injury, the officer may respond with force likely to cause minor physical injury. When an officer reasonably believes that a subject presents an imminent threat to himself or others likely to cause death or serious bodily harm, the officer may respond with force likely to cause death or serious bodily harm. In all uses of force, we also have a comprehensive reporting system for any type of force, including the use of lethal force. In a case like this, that review is delayed until the criminal investigation is completed and the county attorney renders his finding. And the reason is administrative policy is not the same as criminal statutes and criminal investigations. And there is very good reasons in case law why you never want those to overlap. They are separate matters. I also want you to know that by policy, an outside agency is called and requested to investigate matters like this, officer-involved shootings. And we contacted the Lawrence Police Department and they were willing to assist. And so I want to publicly thank them for their assistance in a difficult case like this. It's also important for you to know that to prevent any perception or any actual interference in their investigation, I had no contact with their investigators and my staff did not contact them. The only contact they had was when the Lawrence Police Department would request things from us, like body camera footage, in-car camera footage, things like that. For me to have any other contact or for us to assist them in any other way would create an appearance of a conflict or interference, and it's really important that you and the public be assured that that didn't happen here. I want to close, and then I'll take some questions, but it's important to know that before you ask your questions, because of that due diligence on my part, this report that Mr. Wilkerson has been reviewing for over a month, we just received it last week. So I have not seen it yet. Also, because of the delayed review of the administrative issues, I don't have a lot of information that I can share because that hasn't been determined yet whether or not all the actions taken by the officers that night complied or adhered to our current policy. So until we get a chance to do that, I can't answer a lot of questions about policy issues. We will form a shooting review team immediately after this, and they will conduct that review and submit their findings to me with recommendations, if any. So with that said, I'll take questions, but I want to say one more time how sorry I am that Mr. Kemp lost his life that night. Thank you.